Donald Trump and his stooges are reeling right now, and that is for two main reasons. The first being J.D. Vance's damning non-answer on whether or not he would have overturned the 2020 election on January 6th and attacked our democracy, which became the defining moment of the vice presidential debate. And that was followed up the next day, yesterday, with the breaking news report from Jack Smith with new damning evidence of Donald Trump's criminality and his attempts to overthrow our democracy, overthrow our election on January 6th and the days leading up to it. And now that is refocusing this election on the issue that Donald Trump and the rest of MAGA do not want to talk about, their attempts to overthrow our democracy and the real threat that they still pose to it. Donald Trump does not want to talk about this. Donald Trump wants to distract with lies about immigration, conspiracies, Hannibal Lecter, attacks on Kamala Harris, but what voters want to talk about right now is the danger that he is to our democracy, and that is absolutely terrifying Donald Trump, and it terrifies his stooges who now have to answer for J.D. Vance's non-answer and this new damning report from Jack Smith. And that is exactly what happened when one of the worst MAGA Republicans and Trump stooges, Tom Emmer, went on CNN and was pressed on all of this by Kaitlan Collin. He absolutely melted down, especially when Collins called out his lies. And we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video. And if you haven't already, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way in supporting our channel and really means the world to me. Now let's get into this video.
So no, I thought it went extremely well.
But did you think he'd get that question? Did you talk about how to answer the 2020 question?
Listen, this is, again, he answered it. You don't like the answer, but he answered it. This is something that you folks in the media want to focus on a regular basis. The American people, and thank goodness J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, are focused on the election and how to fix this country. So I think he did answer the question.
What about
now, in the other two clips that we will check out from this interview, Kaitlan Collin does a much better job on calling Emmer out on his lies, but she absolutely needed to push back there more. Emmer refuses to give a real answer, just like J.D. Vance. It seems to be what the MAGA Republicans want to do now. They know they can't answer questions, and they know their distractions don't really work either, so they're just pivoting entirely into talking about nothing. This has been the Republican campaign strategy. It is exactly what we've seen from Donald Trump. It seems like at this point, his advisors would be happy for him to meander into weird thoughts about windmills and Hannibal Lecter because it distracts from the real issues in this election. And that's all Republicans can do because, of course, as we know, they don't have solutions to problems, and their agenda is one that they are running from in Project 2025. And so they're just trying to distract, which is exactly what Kaitlan Collin called out Tom Emmer for in this clip right here.
Trump and J.D. Vance are going to fix it, and that's why they're going to win the election on the 5th of November.
So is that the tactic for Republicans, is just to not answer questions about that and just move on, focus on immigration, focus on the economy, both very important issues. But I mean, as we can see by what Donald Trump is still saying, so is what happened with the election and his efforts to overturn it.
Apparently, you don't like my answer either. What Donald
Let's think about this. If Republicans don't want to answer questions, is it maybe because they don't have solutions to problems? Is it maybe because Tom Emmer, who is a member of the MAGA majority in the House, is a part of the least productive, the least efficient, let's just call it what it was, the worst Congress in history because of the MAGA majority? They were unable to pick a speaker for days. It took them even longer to pick another. They are completely inept, completely incompetent, and they do not want to solve any problems. They just want to complain and then go on Fox News. So maybe these aren't the people who should be running our government. Maybe it is clear that they are completely ill-equipped to do so, and especially when all they want to do was lie. And of course, I talked about how Kaitlan Collin finally did call out Emmer for those lies, and I want to check that out right here.
This would be a topic is because, you know, in 2020, you did sign on to that brief supporting a Texas lawsuit that would have invalidated the election results in 4 states, but you ultimately chose to certify the election. You broke with some of your Republican colleagues, and you chose to certify it. You said in a statement that Congress does not have the authority to discard an individual slate of electors certified by a state's legislature in accordance with their constitution. And you yourself said doing so sets a precedent that I believe undermines the state-based system of elections that defines our republic. I mean, do you still feel that way tonight?
Again, Kaitlan, we're talking about an election that's going to take place in 35 days. What are you doing talking about something that's 4 years ago? We can have this
Trump
debate
is still talking about it
some
from 4
other
years
time
ago,
going
with all
forward.
due respect,
The people are hurting. Well, with all due respect, Kaitlan, people want to know. They're hurting. They want to know.
Once again, I would have liked a tiny bit more pushback from Kaitlan Collin. We saw yesterday CNN's Jim Acosta, who is a great friend of this show, just kick off Trump Stooge and Trump advisor Corey Lewandowski off his show because he was lying about the 2020 election. He was refusing to properly pronounce Vice President Kamala Harris's name. And so Jim Acosta just said, this interview is over. We're done. We're not having you back. And I wish more hosts would do that, because why should you allow them to push these lies? A soft answer, or a soft response of pointing out that the answer that they're giving is just false is not enough. And while I do commend Kaitlan for calling him out, we need to do a better job of doing so. But we did see that on CNN today when Republican Mike Brown wouldn't commit to a peaceful transition of power. And the CNN host absolutely called him out in a way that we need to see more of, and I want to check that out.
You will commit to a peaceful transfer of power.
That was so vague that that's why the Congress stepped in to clarify that.
Because of what January 6th
law.
happened. And, okay, but listen, will you commit to a peaceful transfer of power?
We've had protests that have exploded into riots all over this country, including in Minneapolis, including in Portland. So I don't think you necessarily draw the causality. But at the end of the day, yes, we should have peaceful transfer of power in this country. Absolutely.
And you will certify the results if every state certifies the results.
If it is a free and fair election, absolutely.
Well, what does that mean? What does a free and fair election mean? 2020 was a free and fair election, and members of Congress tried to overturn the results. So what does that mean to you?
Ask Hillary Clinton when she said Trump was not a legitimate president. He was selected.
Being a poor loser, being a sore loser, which Democrats have been, is different from trying to overturn the will of the people.
We talked about this, you and I, in 2021. I voted to certify. Others didn't. They had their concerns, but we worked things out in the courts and we worked things out in debate. There should never be a riot. And at the end of the day, we had Joe Biden come in as president. So,
all right.
So Jack Smith has a political motivation, and I think that's crystal clear.
And you have every right to make that argument. Representative Tim Walz.
Continue to ask that question. If 2020 wasn't a legitimate election, what is? That was the most secure and most legitimate election we've ever seen, absent Donald Trump's attacks on our democracy. There wasn't illegitimate voting. There was no illegitimate electors except those that Donald Trump tried to push. He was the one trying to interfere with our 2020 election in the same way that he did in 2016. And we know that to be true, that he is a danger to our democracy. And so it's not just us calling him out, but Republicans as well. And in a breaking news story, Trump's former aide, Cassidy Hutchinson, has officially endorsed Kamala Harris. And I want to check that out.
But in my experience, number one, from being up close to Donald Trump, seeing his character, knowing who he is, believing him when he tells us who he is, and also who he chose as his vice presidential running mate, J.D. Vance, who's a whole separate conversation. It's just a despicable portrayal of the Republican Party. I am really, really proud as a conservative to have the opportunity to vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in this election. Policy is important. It's very important to me. And there may be few issues that Kamala Harris and I would see eye to eye on. I hope that we'd be able to come to consensus on a lot more issues. But in saying that, the character of our leaders really matters too. We need to be able to elect people that we can trust to uphold our rule of law, people that we want our children to look at and to want to emulate. Kamala Harris is from a working class background. Tim Walz is from a working class background. Those are the people that Donald Trump claimed to represent, but actually exploited and manipulated their support. So, I say to Republicans who may be on the fence, I understand how frightening it can be to potentially break with your party. I also understand that there are concerns, and very valid concerns, about inflation. But Donald Trump and J.D. Vance cannot be trusted with the Constitution. They cannot be trusted to uphold our rule of law, and they can't be trusted to enact responsible policy. that in and of itself is disqualifying amongst many other things, some of them being that Donald Trump is also under federal and state indictments.
Character matters. I couldn't agree more. And it is so great to see Cassidy Hutchinson officially come out and endorse Kamala Harris, because I've seen a lot of Republicans, and it really bothers me. I don't know how y'all feel about this, saying, oh, well, I can't support Donald Trump, but I don't want to commit to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz necessarily. What are you doing? Have a backbone. Have some spine. Show up. Do the right thing. Say, no, I am fully endorsing Kamala Harris. Liz Cheney did it. Dick Cheney did it. Mitt Romney, George W. Bush, I'm looking at you. Time for you two to step up as well. But great job from Cassidy Hutchinson. I hope to see more of that. And we're going to be covering all that on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button and leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.